Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast. My name is Kara Buntin, and I've owned a home-based business since 1999 in various forms. So that's what we talk about here. And today I wanted to talk about an interesting question that came up a while back in my public Facebook group, which was whether you refer to yourself as we or I if you're a one-person business and you work from home. And I thought this was interesting because I kind of go back and forth. And there are times when I have used the we consistently and consciously. And there are times when I use I consciously. And it's for different reasons. And I think the people who were commenting on this had a lot of, very specific reasons why they do one or the other. But I think that there are things that we don't think about as far as customer perception. And that's usually the reason why people use we instead of I. And this really is just about how do people perceive your business? And do people respect your business if they think that you're just a one-person artist or a one-person at-home business? Now, I'm going to say something that might be controversial, although I've said it before. And probably, I think if you think about it, you probably agree that people pay a lot of lip service to support small business and we love the artists. But unless you are like building your business on your own individual work, like I am an artist, I do painting, I do photography, my name is my business, that is me, that people don't really respect you as much if you are a small home-based business and they don't think that you're a big business. And you might disagree with that. This is from my experience after 24 years. Yeah, 24 years of being in business. I have seen firsthand that the majority of people say, I want to support small business, but then they don't trust it as much if they're buying from your website. So they go to Etsy or they go to Amazon because it's a big business. We know we can trust Amazon. They're very reluctant. There's also a lot of emails, more like online scams, so you can't blame people for that. But I think that people don't give the respect that is deserved to a home-based business because they don't think it's a quote-unquote real business until you get to the point where your name is recognized and people kind of go, oh, you're serious about this. So, this is my opinion. If you disagree, leave me comments. But I think that is the main reason why people use the we instead of saying, I do this, I do that. They say, we provide blah, blah, blah. We do our company, whatever. You do that because it makes people, it gives the perception, like people have the perception that a larger company is more trustworthy. Or it's a real business. It's not just you sitting at home making stuff. And basically, that's what my wedding cake business was. It was me at home making cakes. But people did not trust that necessarily as much. I think that they did. Once I got a reputation, once you build your reputation and people know your name associated with the business, then they do trust you. And this is kind of bad. I'd gone to events where people said, oh, what's your name? What do you do? That kind of thing. You're introducing yourself. And I've introduced myself to people who said, oh my God, I wanted to hire you for my wedding cake, but you were booked. And I was so disappointed. And then I feel bad, right? But, that shows that I had built my business to a point where people years later would remember that they wanted to hire me for their wedding cake. At that point, the I is not such a big deal because they know that it's your business and you have a reputation and people kind of assume that you are a legitimate business. Even if you always were, it's a perception thing. This is perception. So when people use the we, it's to give off the perception, give off the idea that they're a bigger business and it's quote unquote more legitimate. If people haven't heard of you, then they think that you're more legitimate if it's a bigger business because that kind of implies that you have the money to hire employees and you have the money to have a physical store and that kind of thing, which we know is not necessarily any indication of anything, but it's perception. This is the customer's perception. So another story, I will tell another anecdote. I think I've told this one before. when I did wedding cakes at home, there was a network of home-based bakers, because in Richmond where I live, well, in the counties surrounding Richmond where I live, you can bake from home. In the city of Richmond, you can't. But there were home-based bakers who were home-based businesses, and we all knew each other. And it's good to have backup if you do wedding cakes and you are working by yourself, because if you get sick, you have to pass that job off to someone just so that that cake gets delivered. So we all kind of worked together. And one of the women who I knew worked from her home, and I was sitting at a tasting appointment in my rented office. This is the office that I rented for tasting appointments so that I wouldn't have to bring people to my house, because I had kids, I had a husband. They all, they don't like having to work around that. So I rented an office, and this woman was sitting in my office, and she said, yeah, we went to another baker, but I pulled up outside her house and I realized it was someone's house, and I just drove away because I don't want to hire someone who works from their house. Okay, we're sitting in an office. There's no kitchen in sight. Okay, this is it's like it's a one-room office, but I had shelves with display cakes, I had pamphlets, I had photo books, and it was an office. And the perception of the fact that I had an office made me more professional, apparently. And either she didn't make the connection that I bake somewhere else, or just having an office gave me that legitimacy that made her want to hire me. And she did. And I didn't correct her. But I knew exactly who she was talking about, because she was talking about going to this other woman. And I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? She works from her home just like I do. So the perception of a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people prefer, whether they know it or not, they prefer to go to a business that they think is larger and more established, and using the we and putting up the facade of it wasn't a facade, but you know what I mean. I did not work from my office. I didn't bake in my office. I didn't decorate in my office. But having an office made people think that I was a legitimate business. Okay, again, it's perception. So using the we, I think, gives off that perception of a larger business, because it's we, right? It's more than one person. And it will get you less crap from customers. People will not treat you the same way if they think that you're just a person working from home. And, I hate to say that, because I know that there's no difference. Obviously, there's no difference in the professionalism that I would display, whether it's me or a team. I'm still going to do the same work, whether I'm working from home or from an office. But that's not what people think. That's not the perception, whether it's conscious or unconscious. It's just a bias that people have. So I think that that's one reason why people use the we. It gets you a little more respect immediately, and people take you a little more seriously. All right, now the other side of this is the fact that you are an I. You are just one person. And a lot of people want to use the I do this because they want to build up their reputation, and they want to have the work attributed to them as opposed to a team. And in certain professions, like if you're a painter, right, or a photographer, if you're a painter or you're doing your own work, your name is on the business. Clearly, you are that one person. It doesn't mean you can't have employees, though. So you can still say we, even if you have your name on the business. But there are customers who want to buy from that artisan. So if you're a painter, or you're making jewelry that's handcrafted, or you're doing whatever you do, if you're one person doing it and you want to kind of establish that I am the artist kind of feeling, then using I might be good. But it's a different kind of customer relationship. And I know that when people buy directly from an artist, that's a certain customer who wants to do that because it's not to support the artist. They want that connection. Again, this is the customer perception of the connection between them and the product and the artist. So it's something you have to decide for yourself. There's no right answer about this. For me, like I said, I kind of go back and forth. And it just depends where I'm putting it. I'm putting the I, and I think about this. Sometimes I don't think about it, but a lot of times I do think, should I use I here? Should I use we? And I think that we is kind of a buffer between you and the customer to a certain extent. When you're using I, there's like a direct relationship between you and the customer. So it depends on what the purpose is. What does your main customer want? What does your customer base want? Do they want a relationship with the person that made the thing? Or do they just want the product? Right? And it's a weird balance. You have to kind of figure this out for yourself. And like I said, there's no right answer. But in my experience, using we gives people kind of more of an assurance that you're not a single person that's going to run off with their money. And I don't know why that happens. I know that that's not accurate. I know that it's not fair. It's not a fair assumption to make that if someone uses I, they are less valid, right? So I'm not saying that. Don't come at me in the comments with that. But in my experience, I do tend to get less crap when people think that I have a team to blame things on. I don't know. And I think probably dealing with brides is a little bit different than dealing with people online, because when you're dealing one-on-one with people, and that could be the difference. When you're dealing one-on-one with people, they kind of want to know who's making their cake. And I actually use that as a selling point, come to think of it. That when this is an interesting, I just remembered this, that when brides were sitting in my office for a tasting appointment, I would say to them, so that you know, I do everything. I do your decorations. I bake your cake. I decorate your cake. I deliver your cake. And for me, that was a quality thing. But at that point, they're in my office, right? So at what point do you switch over from the we to the I? And I would say you don't want to hire someone. This is so bad. It's not actually bad because it's true. I would say you don't want to hire someone who isn't going to be doing the work. Like you hire their bakery, but they have 3 people on the baking line who are just mixing up cake mixes. You have somebody else who's decorating it. You have somebody else who's delivering it who could be a contractor. And a lot of people did that. They would hire someone just to deliver the cakes. That person had no idea. I've had people deliver cakes before. I once had somebody, I was setting up a wedding cake and somebody delivered the groom's cake. This guy didn't know anything about decorating. He put the cake on the table. It was completely smashed and he walked away, right? So I used that story and I said, you know what? You want the person who is responsible for the cake to be the one that sets it up, bakes it, decorates it, delivers it, because that person will care about it. And the other thing I said, the only people that should touch the wedding cake are the person who bought it and the person who made it. No one else should have their hands on that cake. And that was a selling point for brides who wanted that connection and who wanted a custom cake that they knew they were going to get what they were getting as they were talking to me, because I was the one that was going to be taking care of all the details. So at some point you do kind of want to switch over to the I, and this was a marketing thing, right? And I swear to God, I just remembered that, and I hadn't thought about doing that, but I used the I as a selling point because there were a lot of bakeries, and there still are, where you don't know who's making your cake if you're buying a wedding cake. And this is somebody's wedding cake. They take that a little more seriously than a birthday cake. But if your customer base is not like that, then you might not need to worry about that. If your customer base does want that connection, then using I might be better. Totally up to you, personal preference, but think about the reasons why you would use the we or the I, because it really boils down to customer perception. And sometimes you want to give off the image that you're bigger than you are. Sometimes you want to use we to imply that you have a team, because that makes people think that you're more established and more reliable. And I know that's not true. I've said I know that that's not true, but it's perception. And if you understand that you have to look at things through the customer's eyes, your business is going to be a lot more successful in the long run. That's just marketing. Okay, so leave me any questions. Post your comments, because I'm sure that everybody has thoughts about this. I might not respond to everything, but if you have a reason why you use we or I, post it in the comments. I think it's interesting to see other people's perspectives on this. And give this video a thumbs up. I will talk to you next week.